Well, hello. We are here at the end of Realm Makers Conference 2014 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with Steve Laube, agent slash publisher now. An interesting perspective that Steve has. This conference is about spec fiction, and I have been trying to figure out how to define that for a long time. So I just wanted to ask you about spec fiction,
Sure.
and then get to the big announcement you made at the beginning of the conference, which is a really exciting time for certainly Christian spec fic authors. So you were talking today in your session, helping us see a little bit of what genres are included in this thing called speculative fiction. So how do you explain that?
Well, trying to simplify it, and of course all generalizations are generalizations and there are exceptions to every rule. But I see speculative fiction as an umbrella term that under it come three major mega categories, and those three are science fiction, fantasy, and horror, or as we call it in the Christian market, paranormal, because we would never publish horror.
Right.
Never, ever. Sorry, Frank Peretti. But anyway, all fantasy is speculative fiction, because you're building a world, you're making it up, everything within that world is made up.
Mm-hmm.
Science fiction can be both speculative, well, not both, it can be either speculative or not.
So an example of non-speculative science fiction would be what?
The movie Gravity,
Okay.
because it takes place in this world with our physics, with our rules, our laws, our current culture, all of that. There, yes, the story is made up. Yes, technically it is speculation of what would happen, but that's not the nature of speculative fiction. So you have in that movie or that story is something that is science fiction, but not necessarily speculative. If the movie Gravity took place on Neptune,
Okay.
one of the moons of Neptune, that would be speculative fiction because it would not fit in our current understanding, because to get there, for one thing, would change the whole nature of the storyline. Then with paranormal, you've got the thing that it kind of covers both the made up and the non-made up. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is paranormal or horror. That's not speculative. It's just a serial killer in a mask with a weapon. And so that you see the difference.
Yes.
You have this subtlety, and I think within all of these categories, it allows us to help us understand what this word or this umbrella term means.
So these can overlap as well. And so, for example, a superhero story,
Right.
is that speculative fiction?
Of course, it would be speculative, but it could also be fantasy because it's made up.
So there's a combination of elements.
Yeah, and in fact, during the class I drew a chart, which helps. Unfortunately, I can't do it for our viewers here. But it has you seeing the overlaps, because even science fiction and paranormal overlap, and then can also intersect with fantasy. And sometimes there's a story that fits all three, so it becomes a mashup.
Yeah.
And superhero books, you think of Iron Man and other things of that nature.
Well, Marvel Zombies would fit them all.
Exactly. It really does. You've got this challenge of multiple genres together. We like to analyze and label things. And in that effort, it allows the salesmen, booksellers, authors even identify the fan base of a particular type of thing. If we say everything is speculative fiction, well, we're talking to everybody, and then we're talking to nobody.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we try to have these sub-labels to help us identify it all.
And you've been doing this a long time, so you've worked on pretty much every side of the publishing industry. Before you were an agent, you were doing acquisitions.
Yeah.
Before acquisitions, you were selling.
I was a bookseller.
So with a lot of experience, you've kind of seen not only every angle of the industry, but you've seen a lot of changes. And one of the themes of this conference is it's a lot of people who are frustrated that they don't fit into the, what do you call it, the buggies and bonnets, the more traditional stories, where we write weird stuff, we like weird stuff, and the publishers, especially in CBA, are afraid to take chances on that.
not necessarily afraid, is that every time they have stepped out, they've had their hands slapped by the market. And I'd say, well, what does that mean? That means that they have not sold at the level that the other more traditional genres have sold. And so consequently, if you're a business person, you are going to say, well, what are we going to invest in? It's the products that are going to give us the best return on our investment. And when we keep having this level of sales success or lack thereof, then why do we keep doing this? We're hitting our heads against the wall. Yeah. And so there becomes an expectation. You have certain publishers, you know, one might sell 5,000 copies, and they have steak dinners. They celebrate. They're so excited because they had such a successful book. Yeah. You go to another publisher and they sell 5,000 copies, and people lose their jobs. It all depends on the expectation that you have. And these are business decisions, not genre decisions. Mm-hmm. So it's really not an anti-speculative fiction or science fiction mentality. It's a, you know what, we've not done very well. And if I may, just for the, for your audience, is to say, the major publishers, you really have to have a trinity of equal partnerships inside the publishing house to be successful. You have to have an acquisition editor who gets it, who gets the weird, who gets the unusual, these kinds of books. Then you also have to have a marketing department that understands it and knows how to sell it, and a sales department that can represent it and convince the objectors that they need to carry the book. Without one of those three parts, the stool falls over.
And I would say, I mean, my experience and a lot of other people's, you can even have those three, and they're hopeful that they can know how to sell it.
There's no guarantee.
But it's still hard to get to the market. So to that end, well, Jeff Gerke, a few years ago, created March of the Lord Press, and you said it filled the void of all these scripts that nobody knew what to do with them. And the big announcement was made, I think, around December, January, that
January 1st.
You
purchased it.
You purchased March of the Lord Press, and certainly a lot of people were talking about that. If you're familiar with Christian publishing, this is definitely something that affects you if you're trying to break in or if you're in the market. But at the beginning of Realm Makers this week, you decided to make the big announcement here, and I thought it was really neat. So would you share that?
Well, what I decided to do is, after looking at when you're taking over a company, everything's up for grabs. What are we going to do? Are we going to do anything different? From an acquisition standpoint, no. But from a branding standpoint, yes. So after a long process, I decided to change the name of the company from March of the Lord Press to Enclave Publishing, E-N-C-L-A-V-E. And if I had,
it's a great logo. We'll have it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I could show it, I would here.
Oh yeah,
but,
definitely going to be up on the screen.
Yeah.
Enclave Publishing, and you are explaining that an enclave is more than. First of all, someone might not even know what the word means, but there's multiple meanings.
Here's the challenge: is that I got some pushback initially, even here, from a couple folks saying, "Why would you choose a word that means insular? That means we're a closed-off group that doesn't want to talk to other people." And I have to smile and say it's just the opposite. The word enclave, for the lack of a better definition, is a group of like-minded people that gather together, that are surrounded by people who are not like-minded. West Berlin was an enclave. Mm-hmm. There is an enclave in Rome called Vatican City.
Kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. And for the millions and millions of Catholics worldwide, that enclave represents the heart and soul of their faith. Anytime you have believers gathering together, you're technically creating an enclave, a place where there is a haven, where you can have like-mindedness, you can be encouraging, you can get instruction, you can be prepared, you can network and understand, and then you go out. It's just the opposite of coming in and putting up barriers and walls and quote-unquote talking to the choir. Well, we are the choir talking to each other, we rehearse together, and then we go out and about and take our stories out into the world.
Our weird stories.
Our weird stories. And one thing I didn't do at this meeting, and I'll do it here for your audience, is that I have a verse from Scripture that will be the theme verse for our company. And it's Acts 17:20, which reads, "What are these strange things we hear? Could you explain them to us?"
It's great.
Because that's exactly what we're doing with these weird stories, these strange stories. And if someone says, "What in the world were you talking about when you had that dragon and that ghoul and that, you know, zombie in the story?" And you go, "Well, you see the thread of redemption that's coming along here? You have an opening and an opportunity to present your message. Even though the message is not overt, it's embedded just because it's written by someone with that thought process and that belief system." I'm very excited about the opportunities.
And there's a lot of us who are excited that this could be maybe the tip of the spear for Spec Fic, to tell these stories. The Bible's full of all kinds of weird stuff. And a lot of people pretend that maybe it's not there or something. I don't know. But now this is your first, and you've been doing conferences a long time. What is it?
Almost 25 years.
What's the experience been like now to come as an agent and a publisher?
Well, this is technically my first experience as a owner of a publishing company in a group of people that are trying to publish with our company.
Yeah.
So it was a very different experience. If you ever have a chance to come to a Realm Makers, you should, just to watch the creativity.
This is an awesome conference.
There is so much diversity in the ideas, even though many people are writing the same type of things. I've heard more versions of dragon lore, more versions of science fiction, how to get through portals of time and all that. Really? You think about this all day? Wow, this is very different. Because I go to other conferences where I hear some of that, but not everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Or to hear a class on how to effectively kill people was really bizarre.
The breakout sessions, there was an entire session on Christian horror, and I just loved it. I mean, those are the kind of questions
you're not going to
asking.
find that any other place.
So this is only the second year of Realm Makers. I am blown away. I see a lot of potential here for growth.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who are feeling like they've been left out, that they're not a voice in a process they like to participate in. And maybe if somebody is interested in trying to submit a script, you might know something about that. Are you interested?
Well, what we're doing, currently we're reworking the March of Lord Press website.
Okay.
It's going to be rebranded as enclavepublishing.com. That will go live, my guess is sometime in the next 30 days, by the end of June.
Okay.
In the meantime, you can still submit materials through the March of Lord Press website.
Okay.
It's all set up. Our door is always open. I never say no unless I see it, but I do say no 99.99% of the time.
Hey, you rejected me fair and square like 7 years ago, I think.
Yep. I mean, that's what happens.
You read it first, though.
Yeah, I did read it. I rejected Ted Decker. So
You rejected everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah. You don't make a name without doing some rejection.
Yeah, we all talk about it, going, "Wow, I missed that one, didn't I?"
And if they don't write the weird Spec Fic stuff, you are also maybe able to talk to them or look at some other query letters.
As a literary agent, SteveLaube.com, LAUBE.com.
Which is a great site. I've told you about it.
Thank you.
I've gotten a lot of good knowledge about the industry and trying to learn how to be an author. So go to SteveLaube.com, LAUBE. All the links are here with the video. And looking forward to the future with Enclave and Christian Spec Fic. I hope to see some new
fun.
frontiers forged.
Thank you.
Thanks.